Okay, we will go ahead and get started here. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jamie Staten, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at Trecca. And we are recording this session so we can share with the families that were not able to attend the live session. For today's topics, we are going to focus on testing topics, and we're going to talk about student and family preparation before the test, tips for during the test, test anxiety, and how to interpret test results. And we have several different staff members that are going to be helping us with this today. We have Mr. Iacobbucci, he's with our teaching staff, Mrs. Lawrence with our K-6 teaching staff, Mrs. Baldwin with our K-6 teaching staff, Miss Summerly Rollins, she's one of our high school counselors, and then Miss Jessie Tafe, she is one of our high school counselors. So at this time, I will go ahead and turn the session over to Mr. Iacobbucci.
Okay, thanks, Miss Staten. So I'm Mr. Iacobbucci, and I teach English 2, and I also teach the English State Test Prep course here at Trecca. So I'll be sharing some tips for you and your child to prepare for testing day. And being prepared both mentally and physically can provide you with the right frame of mind to begin a test. So we have some tips for helping your student be ready mentally and physically. First, we want students to get plenty of rest. Not only does sleep help your long-term memory retain information, but getting enough sleep the days leading up to the test will help make you more alert, contribute to a positive mood, and decrease stress. Getting your body used to being alert at the right time will help you to perform the best on testing day. You can practice by setting an alarm prior to testing, because the test might not be scheduled for the typical time that your child does their schoolwork. And as many of you know, your children probably have atypical sleeping schedules. So practice getting up at the time you need to get your day started in the days leading up to testing. You also want to plan your meals, and eating a healthy, balanced meal will give you the good nutrition that you need to do your best. It'll give you ample energy for your test. And some students try uh, to get some quick energy with a caffeine drink, but you actually want to try to avoid that. Try to avoid drinking caffeine right before the test, because it can leave you just feeling jittery or anxious, and you won't have that calm and stable state of mind during the test. You can also plan a reward. So we know testing is hard for you and your student. So you can think of something that you can do either after the student takes each test, or at the end of the week after all the tests are completed. That's something that you can go out and do and kind of reward yourself for putting forth the good effort. You can go ahead. Another tip is to develop some pre-testing rituals. So consistent habits and behaviors can help put you at ease in different stressful situations. So the rituals depend on what works best for your child, and you know your child the best. Some examples might be visualizing your success on the exam, taking a short walk, or listening to music, maybe listening to a particular song that kind of pumps you up and gets you in a positive state of mind. Another thing that we can do is you can find out as much as you can about the tests, including why you're taking it. Some tests are the graduation requirements, and those are called the end of course or EOC tests. Other courses are diagnostics, like the STAR tests, and then other tests are for college readiness, like your ACTs or SATs. So, kind of knowing what the test is for can help you to be ready for it. If you're not sure, you can ask your teacher, advisor, or school counselor if you're unsure what this test is for. And finally, the tip is just to practice, 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 and keep being active in your courses, because the more you know about the test, the less anxiety you'll feel. your teachers can help you greatly with this. Just ask or review resources that they have posted in classes, and you can help practice in our extra launchpad sessions, or actually just by completing your schoolwork and working in your classes. um, that's a great way to practice and prep for these tests as well. So on testing day, what can you bring with you? You want to bring your Trekka iPhone if you have one, and we might need to use the hotspot internet. And you also want to bring some different layers of clothing, because we're testing in different places and we're not necessarily sure about what the temperature is going to be in there. So you want to be prepared for that. And if you're wondering, you don't need to bring your computer and you don't need to bring a calculator, because one will be provided for the math tests that allow them. You want to look out for your testing letter. These will come in the mail from Trekka, and they have been sent out about a couple of weeks ago. So you should receive those, and they will include your testing dates, times, and location. Before, you want to be able to arrive early and be prepared. So you want to be early on that, early to the testing time that we've given you. It's critical to know exactly where your testing location is and how you plan to get there. Ideally, you can have this planned out long before your test date, but if not, make sure that you at least figure it out the day before your testing and look it up and take a look at the directions to get there. You can use Google Maps to get a view of where your testing is and even what the parking lot is like, to get an idea of where you're going to go on that day. It's also a good idea to establish a pickup plan with your student so that you know where you're going to go, where you're going to meet up afterwards, after they're done testing. And you can plan for a good amount of for them taking their time and having a good amount of time uh, during testing. When you're entering the testing site, just a reminder to be kind and considerate to others by entering the testing site quietly. And remember to focus on you. You may be in a testing room where a lot of students are taking different tests or may have even already started a test. So they'll finish at different times. Everyone, even if everyone else is done, if you're not done and you still have time on your test, go ahead and keep working, and because we want you to get your best score and take your time on these tests. And also be ready for the test just by going having that restroom break before testing, um, and so that you don't have to interrupt during the test and interrupt your train of thought. You also want to be ready to turn in your cell phone. Just so all students know, you'll be asked to turn over your phone when you test, which is typical for a lot of different standardized tests. So we'll ask you to turn off your phone and hand it in. But we understand that they might want it back to get a hold of you. But just during that testing, when they're in the room, they'll hand their phones over, and they'll be in a common area. And lastly, just stay calm and breathe. So to help yourself relax, you can always take some deep breaths. Yes, you're taking a test. Yes, it can be a little scary. And yes, you might not feel totally prepared for it, but you're as ready as you can be and you've prepared as best as you can, so you can do it. And now I will turn it over to Mrs. Lawrence for the next section.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about I'm Dawn Lawrence. I'm the third grade ELA and social studies teacher. So I'm going to give you some tips for during the test. Go on to the next one. So no matter what test you're taking, you'll be able to use scratch paper and pencil to jot down anything as you are reading through, or if you look ahead and these might be important details that I need to jot down. You'll be able to use that on your scratch paper to work out any problems as well. You can always get more if you use up everything you have. We will have plenty. There are some built-in test tools on the portal. So that's a huge thing to prepare you for the day of the test is get in the testing portal if you haven't already, just to familiarize yourself with these testing tools that they have. We talked about the scratch paper, but they also have what's called a line reader. This will just highlight one line of the text and kind of graze the rest of it so you can kind of stay focused on what line you're on. That's also a good tool to use if you're jumping ahead, let's say to the essay, and you need to come back to your reading so you don't lose your place. They have highlighters, masking tools. They even have a digital notepad. So if scratch paper and pencil isn't your thing and you would rather use the digital notepad, you can use that to take notes as well. Another thing that can sometimes be a source of anxiety for kids is the timer that's on there. So I make sure that I let my kids know that you can click on that timer and it will go away. So it counts up as you're working, depending on how much time you have, if it's a 90-minute test. But sometimes it can be a stress too to see that I've spent 7 minutes on this particular question. So if you just click on it, it'll go away. You could always click on it again to see where you're at in that time frame. But if it's not something that you necessarily want to look at, then you can click that. Read each question carefully and make sure that you read through every single question. A lot of times we can misread questions. Sometimes the questions on these tests, the wording can be a little confusing. So it's important that you are reading them carefully, read it a couple times, make sure that when you go to answer it, you're answering all the parts of the question. And don't leave any questions blank. For multiple choice questions, they have some tools in there as well. So one that I really like is the strike through feature that they have. So if I'm looking at all 4 multiple choice questions, I know that the answer is not B and it's not D. I can click on that strike through feature and it will eliminate those answer choices for me. So that way, if I have to make a guess, I have a better shot of guessing with just 2 answer choices rather than having to choose from the 4. So make sure that you can use that. There's also, if you're on a question and you feel like you're taking too much time and you want to come back to it later, that you can flag it. You can mark it to come back later. It'll put a flag on it. You won't be able to submit your test until they show you what questions you've flagged. Also, if you see a red triangle, you know that you did not answer that question. So those are 2 things to look for before you submit your test. Okay. The essay. So depending on which part of the ELA test you're taking, if you notice that it's shorter, that typically means that you have the essay question at the end. The essay can count for about 1/3 of your total test points. So that's what we have that scratch paper for, that digital notebook, to start organizing your thoughts. You have less questions because the majority of your time is going to be spent on that. So make sure that you're allowing yourself enough time to organize what you need to from each passage. Typically, it's going to ask you to compare something using the 2 passages that you read. Make sure that you use details from those passages in your response. So just make sure that you're doing that. It might be a good idea to preview the essay prompt ahead of time. Look at what it is that you need to really be focused on and maybe jotting down on your scratch paper or your notes to get some ideas as well. Even in the 3rd grade task, they ask the students to create a multi-paragraph essay, meaning more than 1 paragraph. So you need to make sure that you've got a good introduction, a good body with details in it, and then a conclusion to your essay as well. But as we've said, there is a time limit, so just make sure that you're kind of keeping an eye on that as well. It is okay to take breaks. can be a long day. If you're taking 2 parts of a test, that could be 3 hours, 90 minutes per test. So if you need to take a short break, a brain break, do some breathing, whatever helps you kind of calm down and get focused again so you can get back to it, then do that. And like we said, it could be a long day, 2 tests, 3 hours. Bring water. You could also bring something like a piece of fruit, a protein bar, something that you could maybe have between tests that might kind of help you stay focused and get your energy back up to complete your next one. And I think, use all your time. So 90 minutes might seem like a really long time, but honestly, it can go pretty fast when you're doing these tests. So don't rush through them. I've said before, if you feel like you're taking too long, mark it, come back to it later. If there's the red triangle, then you didn't complete it. Use the features there to help you. But if you have to take a guess, don't leave anything blank. Make sure that you answer everything. You have a better chance of earning points if you respond to every question. Use an educated guess if you have to. Like we said with the strike through thing, if you have to narrow it down to 2 answer choices, you have a better chance 50-50 than trying to guess from all 4 answers. And I think from here, I am turning it over to Mrs. Baldwin.
Hi. So yes, I am Jane Baldwin, and I teach 2nd grade with TRECA. And 2nd grade is not a state tested grade level, but I have plenty of experience proctoring the tests for our older students. So after students finish testing, these are some suggestions of things to do. Reflect on the entire process together. What went well? What was a struggle? Thinking about those things will help you prepare for next time. And sometimes next time is the very next day, but sometimes it's the next testing season, which, could be the following school year. But continue to be positive with your child and encourage them to be positive as well. If a parent has a negative attitude, sometimes that directly transfers to the child, and it does negatively affect both of your thoughts and actions. If something negative did happen, though, during testing, speak with your advisor or your proctor at your location and just think about what could be done differently next time. And certainly don't forget to celebrate. Be proud of your child for completing the tests, and know that teachers, advisors, counselors, and everyone here at TRECA is celebrating with you too. So on the following slides, we're going to talk about test anxiety. And when it comes to taking a big test, we all deal with some nervous butterflies. That's completely normal. And when it happens, you can, ask your child to close their eyes, take some deep breaths, and try to relax and stay calm. Encourage them to be positive and just to try their best. For some students, though, their anxiety might feel very strong. And on the next slide, we'll learn a little bit more about what that looks like. So oftentimes, anxiety can cause a physical, emotional, or behavioral response in our body. And so this chart shows how anxiety can feel. And if your child has really strong anxiety about the test, they might start breathing faster, sweating, or feeling like their head or heart is pounding. They might start to have poor concentration, or negative thoughts can creep in. Sometimes they might feel the urge to just shut down or even leave the testing room. And so on the next slide, we're going to learn some strategies for dealing with this more severe testing anxiety. If your child finds themselves struggling with anxiety while at the testing location, have them try some of these tips. Maybe it's, taking several deep breaths, exhaling slowly after each one. They can visualize the tension draining from their body as they breathe out. You can also tense your muscles and hold for 10 seconds and relax and repeat that 3 times. You can also close your eyes, imagine a peaceful, quiet setting, like the beach or the forest, that might be different for everyone, but imagine yourself calm and relaxed in that setting. One reminder is for you to review these tips with your child before testing day and, practice them so that they can remember them when they need them. Our proctors are there to help, but your child may be in a room full of other students, and sometimes they might be too nervous or scared to speak up and ask for help. So on this slide, we have some examples of things that they could do to, speak to themselves, self-talk. And it's exactly that, talking to yourself. And there's real benefits to it for everyone. They don't have to speak these words aloud, but rather to themselves in their mind. If they start to feel anxious, they can say things like, I will work hard to show what I know, or I'm going to do my very best, or this is a challenge, but challenges help me grow. And positive self-talk can uplift our mood, give us a confidence boost, and provide that motivation we might need to finish the test. And so again, just a reminder to review these strategies beforehand so that they're prepared for testing if they're feeling that anxiety. So I believe one of our counselors, I'm not sure which one is following me, but they're going to talk about interpreting those results.
I am Jessie Tafe. I'm the K-8 school counselor here at Trekka, and I'm going to be talking about how to interpret the results for the 3rd through 8th grade tests, and I'm even going to touch on the kindergarten one as well. So you'll see here in this slide that this includes the science scores, which is only 5th and 8th grade, and then the mathematics scores, which is 3rd through 8th grade. And you can see that there's kind of a wide variety, of scores, and they've kind of categorized them from limited all the way up to advanced. But what we like to see is, our goal for students is to see, from 700 to 724, that proficient just shows that they, what they've learned, and shows that, where they're at is kind of where we want them to be. So proficient would be kind of the sweet spot for scores. I do want to mention that on these state tests, if a student gets a limited score, it's not going to, affect them, being, cut back in a grade just because of that score. There are multiple different, reasons or factors that go into maybe a student having to continue on a grade, but, this test would not determine that solely. So, but where we want to be is, the 700 to 724, and above that would be great too. But we kind of want to see students in the proficient grading or the scale. So next is the ELA score, which is the same. So that for 3rd through 8th, we want to see them, kind of in that 700, and above. And the same thing with the ELA is that if they get a lower score, it's not going to define whether they have to stay back in that grade or not. So if you move on to the next slide, that kind of touches on the 3rd grade guarantee a little bit. So for this year, for the 2022 and 2023 school year, the promotion score for the 3rd grade guarantee in the ELA state test would be the scale score of 685. It's a little bit higher than it was last year. I think they're moving it a little bit higher every year as standards go up for the reading guarantee. So something that they've added in, I think they added it in last year, is that they've added a state test reading subscore, which is an alternate reading assessment score. So if, let's say, a student doesn't get 685 on their the 3rd grade ELA, score on the test. If they get a 47 on the alternative assessment or higher, then they would then qualify for the promotion score. So they're kind of doing 2 different scales and scores for the 3rd grade reading guarantee, and I believe they started the subscale last year. And then if we go on to the next slide, they talk about the KRA, so the kindergarten reading, or the kindergarten readiness assessment, I'm sorry. And it talks about this slide. It's kind of, small for the text, but has a lot of information on it. And the KRA is kind of we do it in the fall, so it's kind of backtracking for me, I guess. But we do it in the fall for all the kindergarten students at an event that we have, and the carry is more of an observation assessment that is done, and it's done with 50 questions that the proctors or the teachers will assess for addressing a student's growth and development in language and literacy, social foundations, mathematics and physical well-being, and motor development. And then these are kind of scored, and then you can see that I guess the different score categories would be demonstrating readiness, approaching readiness, and emerging readiness. So depending on where those observations put your student for their score, that'll kind of tell you where they're at and whether maybe they need to have some extra help, or where they're at in the school year, or where they need to grow still. So those are kind of the scores, or how to interpret the scores for 3rd through 8th and a little bit of kindergarten. But again, the scores for those won't determine, whether, if you get a limited score, that doesn't mean that, you failed the 3rd grade or failed the 4th grade. So I did want to mention that. So good luck on those tests, and, try your best. I'll hand it now to our high school counselor, Ms. Rollins.
Thank you. Yes, I am Summerly Rollins. I am one of the high school counselors. I have last names D-O through K. So now I will talk about how to interpret end of course exams for high school. And as we all know, it can be a little stressful because these scores do count towards graduation. And it can be a little confusing depending on the year that your student started, 9th grade. But from this point on, if your student started in the 1920 school year, all of the graduation requirements will thankfully now be the same. So every test, every end of course exam that your student takes is scaled 1 through 5 from limited to advanced. And that doesn't matter whether it's ELA, algebra, geometry, bio, American history, or government. They're all 1 through 5. Jamie, you can go to the next slide. So like I said, students in the class of 2023 and beyond have specific requirements for their English 2 and Algebra 1 end of course exams. So those points 1 through 5, that is more so used for students prior to the class of 2023, where we would have to use those points to add them up to a total of 18. But now we're looking at the actual score that they receive. So for English 2 and Algebra 1, a student must earn at least a 684 to meet competency for graduation. If they don't get it on their first try, we will keep scheduling them and identifying them for testing until they do meet that 684. And then for American history, American government, and biology, if a student can score 700 or higher, then they can potentially earn a graduation seal. If a student earns a 700 or higher on their biology end of course exam, they automatically receive the science seal. And if they score a 700 or higher on both the American history and the American government end of course exam, they will receive their citizenship graduation seal. Every student now is required to earn 2 graduation seals in order to graduate. And even if your student doesn't hit that 700 mark, the state offers other seals, and you are more than welcome to reach out to your student school counselor to see what those options are. So you are able to log on to your parent portal through Evolve in order to see your students' state testing requirements and scores. So you'll log on to the portal and click on assessments. And then once you click on assessments, you will see end of course assessments. So this example shows that the student took Algebra 1 one time and scored a 4. They took biology one time and scored a 3, and they took the ELA 2 exam one time and scored a 691. It is very dependent on who enters the information of whether you will see the number 1 through 5, or if you'll see the actual score that the student receives. So as I mentioned, for the Algebra 1 and ELA 2 exams, how the student needs a 684, that is technically a 2. However, there's also scores in the 2 category that don't equal a 684. So you will want to check in with the school counselor again if you are unsure whether that 2 has met competency or not. And then you'll also see when you're on that portal if the student has taken the test more than once. So you will see multiple scores.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any questions so far for any of the topics that we have discussed today? We'll allow a couple seconds for that if anyone has any questions. If you wanted to ask a question, you can unmute your microphone or you could put it in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions. We do have a quick survey for the families to complete today. I did, excuse me, put the link for that in the chat box. You could grab it out of the chat box if you wanted. I will also send a follow-up email to those that attended so you can complete the survey that way. So this concludes our session for today. I know we threw a lot of different information out at you. If you think of any questions, you can reach out to your counselor, myself, or one of the advisors, and we will help answer the question for you. We did record this session, so I'll send the recording out today as well to those that weren't able to attend along with the survey. And with that, we will conclude this session. So thank you for joining us, and you are free to go.